Well, hey everybody, it's story time again. This story, I'm going to dig back into the archives of my brain to several decades ago when I was 22 and tell you a story that involves road tripping and hot summer days and scorpions and more of my signature stupidity. When I was 22, during the summer, so I was between semesters at college, I decided to go on a little road trip. My grandparents helped me plan my itinerary and arranged for some specific dates when I could arrive at various aunts and uncles' houses in Texas and spend a day or two with different relatives while I was out just kind of knocking around Texas was my plan. Just spend the summer exploring Texas. So while I was out doing that, and I stayed with my Uncle Ernest at Fort Phantom and my Uncle Joe in the city of Austin. And then I headed further west, and I had 2 weeks where I didn't have anywhere to be except just the road, wherever I wanted to go. Now, back in those days when I would be driving all day and I get tired, I just pull off at a rest stop or a strip mall parking lot and sleep, and nobody ever bothered me doing that. So that was fine. I don't know that you could get by with doing that these days, but back then it was okay. It was summertime and it was hot in West Texas, let me tell you. I'm driving down some nameless, windy back road, and I passed through a little town that, you know how they describe small towns as, oh, it was just a wide spot in, yeah, this wasn't even that. This wasn't even a wide spot in the road. I drove through a little town that was kind of a narrow spot in the road. It was Pine Springs or Pine Flats or Pine something or other. Anyway, all the buildings in town were just built like on the shoulder of the road. So there was a little feed store and a gas station that also served as a little diner that also served as a post office, just kind of all run together, and that was about it. It was one of them little towns that if you blink, you miss it. But on the outskirts of town, there was this sign, and it was the sign that caught my attention. The sign said Devil's Mountain this way, and it pointed to a little turnoff up ahead. Well, I mean, it was summertime, 110 degrees if it was anything. Sunday afternoon, and I'm looking at a sign says Devil's Mountain on it. Well, hell yes, I'm gonna go climb Devil's Mountain. Why not? It's Sunday and I'm hot. Yeah, let's go do it. So I took this turn off and I followed the signs up to Devil's Mountain. And I got to tell you, I was somewhat underwhelmed by Devil's Mountain when it came into view. Now, I am sure that somewhere in some rule book there is a minimum height requirement for a mountain. You must be at least this tall to be considered a mountain, and if you are not this tall, then you're just a big hill. Well, assuming that is correct, and there is a rule book somewhere or a rule about that somewhere, uh, Devil's Mountain made the cut by maybe an inch and a half or 2 inches. I mean, it was just barely a mountain. It looked more like a hill with attitude. In fact, it looked more like a sand trap hill with attitude. There was just a big pile of sand in the middle of nothing. And it had a couple of scrubby little trees here and there kind of clinging to it, and some boulders on the lower elevations. It really was not all that impressive. But I mean, it was Sunday afternoon. I didn't have anywhere to be, and I am literally looking at Devil's Mountain. So, well, I put my car in park and got out. And back in those days, I actually had hair. So I put a bandana on to kind of soak up the sweat and started to climb Devil's Mountain. Now, Climb is probably a misnomer. It was more like walking with a lot of grunting. Pick your way from one boulder to the next in the lower elevations, and then grab onto roots that's jutting out from the sandy soil and pull yourself up to the tree, and then go on to the next one. And you just kind of keep doing that till you get to the top. Well, it was slow goings because the sand was very treacherous, and it would start to fall away from underneath your feet with every step you took. So a couple of times I slid back down a little bit, but for the most part, my progress was consistently upwards and higher. Well, it took about 3.5, 4 hours to get to the top. And when I finally did get to the top, I found there was a couple of other scrubby trees up top and some fairly large rocks, one big enough that I could sit down on and pull out a bottle of Gatorade and enjoy the view, which were my reward for the long, hard slog up to the top. Well, I'm sitting there and I'm enjoying the view, and I look down and I notice that one of my tennis shoes has become untied at some point during the ascent. So I bent over and start tying my shoe back, and that's when I saw the scorpion, little sucker, come out from under a rock near the one I was sitting on. And I mean, he had his tail flipped up, and he was doing the little scorpion skitter dance. And he was mad that I had interrupted his afternoon, and he was coming right toward my hand. And that's like being in one of those dreams where you are running down a hallway or something, but you just don't seem to, your legs are pumping, but they just don't seem to be actually moving you anywhere. Well, that's kind of like what I was going through right there at the time. There was a signal that went from my brain to my hand that said, hey, there's a scorpion coming. You might want to, you know, move that hand on up out the way and avoid being stung. And that message got there, and my hand was like, yeah, okay, at some point, maybe, but it just didn't move. Then the scorpion got closer, and so the message got sent again a little more frantically. Hey, scorpion incoming. Might want to move your damn hand. At about that time, the scorpion got to my hand, and little stinger come out and zapped me. Well, that stopped the whole world from feeling like I was in a molasses dream and got me moving normally again. I hopped up from that rock, then I squashed that scorpion flat when I was cussing and hopping around like a chicken with my head cut off because my hand felt like it was on fire. Now, I didn't know anything about scorpions then. I didn't know, were they lethal? Did I need to go to the hospital? Was I going to die up here if I just kind of tried to walk it off? The only real experience I had with anything scorpion was like a month earlier. I had watched the movie The Scorpion That Ate Cincinnati or some bullshit. I didn't know what to expect. So I MacGyvered it. I had a Swiss Army knife in my pocket. Well, I took it out and I cut a line in the fleshy part of my right hand, just on the pad of my thumb, just below where the little fella had stung me. Then I tried to suck the poison out. I was being MacGyver, you see. So I tried to suck the poison out, and then I took my sweaty and gross bandana and wrapped it around the wound, and that was my makeshift bandage. Very clever. And then I decided, well, maybe I need to get my ass off of this mountain and go to town and ask somebody, is this a serious thing? Am I going to die? Do I need to get this looked at somehow, some way? I didn't have any of those answers on top of the mountain. And the nearest place I knew to get answers was back in Pine, whatever the hell. So I figured step one, let's get off the mountain and go see what they got to say. Well, there was a problem with that because after the scorpion stung my hand, it began to swell up and it looked like a cartoon hand. It was about 2 or 3 times the size of my other hand. And I couldn't really close my fingers and I couldn't really use it. And in fact, every time the wind would blow, just the wind blowing on my hand would hurt. So this hand was just worse than useless. So I had gotten up here by holding on to roots and rocks and shit like that. Well, I couldn't do that anymore because I only had the one hand to work with. So getting down was going to be kind of a challenge. But, I am MacGyver. I'm very clever. And as I look down at my car, which I can see, several hundred feet below me, um, I hit upon a method that I could get down the mountain very quickly with minimal fuss. And I mentally patted myself on the back for this bold idea that I had. And after mentally patting myself on the back, well, I sat down. I kind of eyeballed a path that was relatively free of obstructions between where I was and where I wanted to be at the base of the mountain. Well, then I sat down and slid. I slid down Devil's Mountain. Well, the good news is, well, I got down Devil's Mountain. It took 3.5, 4 hours to get to the top, but I got back down Devil's Mountain in like 90 seconds, which was amazing. That were the good news. The bad news is, when I got to the bottom, and I didn't hit any major, I had a good path picked out, so I didn't hit any trees or boulders or anything like that. I navigated my way down without any significant incident like that. And I'm sitting there about 20 yards from my car in a dust cloud. Y'all remember Charlie Brown cartoons, the character Pigpen? Well, I'm sitting in a cloud of dust like Pigpen from Charlie Brown. And I hurt everywhere. I hurt in places that I did not even know God had put nerve endings for you to hurt. It was just unbelievable how many places was hurting when I got to the bottom of Devil's Mountain. And so for a minute, I didn't do anything, right? I just sat there, like kind of doing a reboot self-assessment. Okay, can you wiggle your toes? Yes, toes are wiggling, so no broken back probably. Can you wiggle your feet? Feet are wiggling. Good, good. Okay, that's progress. Can you moving your legs hurt like a son of, okay, but you can do it. So that's a good start. Good, good. Now, can you stand up? Finally, kind of start to takes a minute, need some support, need to grab onto a rock and stuff. But yes, I can stand up and ow, the pain. Holy God. And why is the back of my legs cold all of it? So I chanced to glance behind me to discover why I'm feeling the wind on the backs of my legs all of a sudden. And that is when I realized that my trip down Devil's Mountain has extracted a price. And the price was paid in denim and flesh because during the trip down Devil's Mountain, the jeans I was wearing basically disintegrated in the back. The sand just sandpapered them off of me. And then once the jeans was gone, it went to work sandpapering my skin. So back of my legs and my butt was just basically sandpapered to a bloody mess. And then the wind would blow and I felt the cool breeze on my naked and bloody ass, basically. So not great, not great. But you know what? It's fine. I was down the mountain. My hand was still cartoon size, and I had no ass to my jeans, and I was a bloody, dirty, filthy mess. But I was off of Devil's Mountain, and it was at this point I began to realize probably how Devil's Mountain had got its name. because, wow, yeah, this was turning into a bad day. So very gingerly, I limp over to my car, burgundy Ford LTD for what that's worth, and get in it equally gingerly, and very slowly drive from Devil's Mountain back the way I had come to Pine, whatever the hell. When I get there, when there's the gas station slash general store, right, which also turned out to sell beer and harder stuff. So I got there's a liquor store too. So I limp into the gas station, and there's this old, I probably 75, 80-year-old American Indian fellow with silver hair, long silver hair and a ponytail, and he's sitting behind the cash register, and he looks up briefly when I limp into his establishment, and then when he realizes I have no ass to the back of my jeans, he looks up again and looks at me like, what in the hell are you supposed to be exactly? Well, I don't pay that look any particular mind because I know how ridiculous I look at the moment. Well, I'll go up and down the aisles and I grab a bottle of Jack Daniels and a bottle of isopropyl alcohol and a roll of gauze, and I go up front to pay for everything and outline in brief how I have come to be in this condition. And I ask him, is there a doctor that I can go visit to have this scorpion wound looked at? And the rest of my wounds, too, for that matter. He considers this for a moment and then shakes his head no. But he does tell me there is a veterinary office with weekend hours, and he gives me direction to that office. So I thank him very much. When I take my purchases and I go into the gas station bathroom and I clean my wounds as best I can with the isopropyl alcohol. I drink the Jack Daniels when I wrap my hand in gauze, and then I try to wrap my bare ass in gauze. And I wind up looking, first off, there's not enough gauze to cover the entire wound. So it's literally a half-assed job. I wind up looking like a low-rent mummy from a B movie, I guess. I get the wounds covered as best I can, and I hobble back out to my car and then follow the old fellow's directions to get to the veterinary office. And once there, I sit in the car for a minute to kind of compose myself because I am at this point really on the verge of tears, both of exhaustion and pain and embarrassment. And this is just turning into a craptastic day. And I just wish it to be over more than anything. So I pull myself together and I hobble out of the car, and the wind picks up and blows part of my ass dressing off. So it's dragging behind me. And now I just look entirely ridiculous. And I make it to the front door of the clinic and I open the door, and this draft of delightfully cool air conditioned air hits me and just instantly make me feel better, at least for a second or two. So I shamble in, and then I am absolutely mortified. Because now, bear in mind, I'm 22, I'm a single guy, I'm off kind of doing my own thing this summer. And wouldn't you know it, but the receptionist at the veterinary clinic is this absolutely gorgeous girl who's about my age. And she has watched me walk through the door and is laughing. And I mean, I just want to crawl under a rock and die. I am so mortified that here's this beautiful girl just laughing at me because I look like hell and I look like a zombie reject from some cheesy movie. And as I think about it, I, she's she's right to be laughing. So I start laughing because she's laughing, and I'm looking down at the absolute mess that I am, and I can't help it. I start laughing too. And by the time I actually get to the counter, we are both just we can't even speak, and we're just tears running down our faces because we're laughing so hard. Well, a couple of minutes of this, and the vet comes out to see what the hell is going on. And then he catches sight of both of us laughing, and then he looks at me to see why we're laughing. And then he started laughing. So now all three of us are just, we can't even communicate. We're just having hysterics in the office of the veterinary clinic. And this goes on for several more minutes. And finally, we all get it out of our system. And the vet asked me, "What the hell happened to you?" And so then I relay the entire, from start to finish, story about the expedition up and then back down Devil's Mountain. And once I get all of that out of my system, I say, and I came here looking for medical assistance because I don't know if this scorpion sting will kill me, and I need help. And he composes himself, and he asked me what color it was and asked me how big it was. And it turns out it's the little ones you have to worry about, the bigger ones not so much. So he says, "Look, you're it's going to hurt for a few days, and you're going to sweat, and you're going to be feverish and nauseous, and it's going to suck. But I'm going to give you some dog penicillin, which is like human penicillin. Just take triple the dose, and you'll be fine. Won't no long-term negative effects." So I do that. He gives me the pills for free. Um, it's 20 miles to the next little town that actually has a hotel. So I backtrack and I get a room and I stay there for 3 days. And I take my dog penicillin and I sweat it out. And in the end, I am no worse for the wear, or so I thought. Actually, all of this is the prequel to another story that I will tell later. But I am happy to report that after my 3 days of feverishness and my ordeal up and back down Devil's Mountain, I did get to take the girl at the veterinary clinic out to dinner. It was the only other time I ever saw her, but it was very nice. And we had the best time just chuckling about the whole way that we first met. And that is why some people call me the Scorpion King now. There you have it. If you thought this was a fun little story and want to hear more like this, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button, as it will help me tremendously and enable me to continue making more content like this. Thank you.